they were hunted to almost extinction just because of the way they look. Um, and then they became protected in the early 90s, and he was getting poked by the metal of the gutter, and he was super angry and very nearly bit me pretty badly. Fortunately, I managed to like just dodge him in time.
Welcome to Working with Wildlife, where I, your host, Jaden Lunt, speak to experts and enthusiasts in different fields of nature so you might find out how you can work with wildlife. Today's guest hails from South Africa and is working now as a school teacher, but in his spare time, he is a snake catcher. So let's welcome to the show the aspiring author, Chris Drew. Welcome to the podcast. This is cool. This is cool to have you on. I would like to start off first with if you could give everyone a bit of an idea of who you are. Obviously, your name's Chris, but just a little bit of information and background on yourself.
Awesome. No, thanks, Jay. Thanks for inviting me. It's first time I've ever done a podcast, and I'm super keen to see you again. Yeah, it's a great idea what you're doing here. So thank you. My name is Chris. I'm 40 now, turned 40 this year, and so I currently live in the beautiful northern rivers of New South Wales, in
So cool.
a city called Ballina, or a little town called Ballina, which is really gorgeous. I actually live kind of just up the mountain in a place called Alstonville, which is it's got waterfalls and creeks. It's just beautiful. And I'm a teacher, so I've been teaching in schools for about 10 years. I'm sure you can hear from my accent that I'm South African originally. So
Oh
I've been
yeah.
living in Oz. Yeah, been living in Oz for about 16 years. Prior to Oz, lived in England and South Korea. So um, God, to get to this point where I am sitting here talking to you, God's led me on quite a journey, which I'm sure will come through in our conversation.
Yeah.
But as I've lived life in Oz, I've taken on quite a lot of extra added things to my identity, like 4 kids. Got 4 beautiful kids come along the way. My
Mm-hmm.
youngest is 7. He turned 7 yesterday. 7, 10, 12, and oldest is 13 at the moment. So the last time you saw her, the oldest one was still a youngster.
Yeah,
That's when you
man.
used to hang off
Off
the
that
gutter
bar,
pipes at
got in
church.
trouble so much from that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those. I remember
Um,
that.
so yeah, good times. That was so I'm being
They were.
my dad now, father of 4. I'm a school teacher. I'm also a writer, so I've just finished writing a book about snakes, actually. So I'm really excited
Right.
about that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, which ties into my role as a teacher and as a father. Um, and I guess how that all fits together, uh, in terms of me being on your podcast about
Mm,
the big small and the amazing, yes, the amazing gift of nature to us, is
mm,
that um yeah, just everything about my life, being a father, a teacher, a mentor, a writer, has been fed by everything I've seen and experienced in nature, and very much reptiles. You and I love
yeah,
reptiles and snakes,
yeah.
and that has just been like a fuel. It's been a driving force. It's been like a grounding tool for me as well. So I see God in that, and it's just added to who I am. Yeah, as a man and as a person. So that's kind of. I hope that paints a picture of who I am and what
Mm.
I'm about. I've got a lot more stories to tell you, which have probably come out further in the conversation.
Yeah, well, you say that you're writing a book. Now, I didn't know you were writing a book.
Yeah,
This is cool.
yeah, yeah,
What is so you said it's based on it's snakes. Could you tell us about this book that you've written?
yeah, sure. So, um, before I was a teacher, I was a journalist in South
Mm,
Africa. So I love writing, right? Um, and I, I've noticed. that snakes in particular don't feature very much in literature, and if they do, they're normally just seen as your classic dangerous animal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
about this time last year, my family and I went for a trip around Australia together with the dogs, two dogs, four kids in a
Yeah.
Toyota
Right on.
Tarago cruising around Oz, which was awesome. But as we traveled, I just realized, wow, there's so many amazing species of reptiles and snakes out there with so many different character traits um, that I would love to use that as an education tool for kids to tell stories about snakes. So you've got the factual, but then you've also got the entertaining. You've got the fictional side because a good story is good for everyone, kids, adults. So I wanted to make this connection between the life of a snake and humans, so that we
Yeah.
could teach people about snakes as well as enjoying stories. So I'm not going to give away too much about the story, but basically, there's a family of snakes who live in Queensland and
Mm.
they travel around Australia. And each adventure, they meet a particular species of snake,
Okay.
and there has to be a problem and then a solution. So it's going to be a long series. I've only written the first
A
one,
series. Okay.
um, but yeah. So each series, each episode, or each book is going to be the snakes going to a particular place. So I'll give you
Mm.
a clue as to what species the main characters are. Their names are Mo, Ray, and Leah, after the genus Moralia. So I'm pretty sure you and
Yes.
your listeners will know what genus that is.
Oh
Anyway, they
yeah.
live in Ipswich. That's their home, Ipswich.
Yeah.
Um, and but they go traveling all over the place. So yeah, I'm doing my own illustrations, and my I'm pretty much finished. I've got about two pictures left to do, and I need to edit my last chapter. So it's
Right.
about 110 pages. Uh, Um, yeah. So perhaps when it's all published, you can do a shout out on your podcast or your YouTube channel or something.
Definitely.
But basically,
Definitely.
that's
Yeah.
the idea. Teaching people about snakes, by going on an adventure, learning about Australia, and seeing
Mm.
life through the eyes of a snake. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Interesting. Interesting. And with snakes, how did you get introduced to snakes? Was this back in South Africa that you? I would assume you. There's a couple species over there that you don't get over here that are really cool. Is
Yeah,
that kind of where
it's it's a good
it budded?
it's such a good question, Jay, because when I was like reflecting about what I was going to talk about with you, I thought I really didn't spend much time with nature, like especially reptiles in Africa at all. And we
Mm.
know Africa's got some amazing snakes and lizards.
Yes.
I did live on the beach, so I spent most of my time with like coastal stuff. That's probably why. But I never encountered snakes in South Africa.
Mm.
I would have loved to have seen a black mamba or boomslang or something, but I just
Yeah.
never saw them. I think the only snake I ever really saw was a brown house snake there, which was it's kind of the equivalent of a green tree or maybe a
Okay.
yellow face whiptail, but
Mhm. Mhm.
nothing special. So to answer your question, this
Mm.
was one of those God wink moments for me. When I arrived in Oz, um, I was living with my wife's family who live on acreage in Ipswich,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
was doing work in the garden, and the first snake I came across was a beautiful little white crowned.
Oh, yes.
He was only then probably like 30 centimeters long, this little white ground. I
Mm.
bashed him with the rake as I was raking the leaves accidentally, so he was like quite
Ah, right, right,
stunned.
accidentally.
But
Yeah.
I had no idea. All I knew, I was 24. All I knew that was that Australia was full of dangerous snakes. But here was this beautiful creature. I'd bashed him. I felt sorry for him. I wanted to know more about him, and that sparked something in me. Like I knew, wow, I'm going to start seeing a lot more reptiles in this country, this new country. So anyway, I went and I started reading, found the white crown snake. I found out that he's not dangerous, and what family he belongs to. that kind of ignited it. A few weeks later, I came across a keelback in the
Oh, yeah.
same garden. Once again, didn't quite know what he was yet. I wish I had known at the time because I would have definitely wanted to keep him around their garden, full of cane toads and stuff. Um, anyway, he mock striking at me, and that passion just kept building. Um, then one night, I was going home with Kerry and my baby at the time in Corona Downs, and you've probably caught many snakes in Corona Downs
Mm,
because it's so full of trees and bush and stuff. But this fam yeah, this family had obviously had a massive carpet python in their kitchen, and I saw them pulling it out with a broom, and they were like really rough with him. He's probably a good 2.5 meters long, and
mm,
it was, I mean, they weren't going to kill him, which is great. But I
mm,
could see that they didn't understand this beautiful creature, and he was really agitated because they'd been poking him with the broom and stuff. Anyway, they dropped him at a park and sort of ran away. And after they'd left, I said to Kezzy, I really want to go and see this beautiful creature. So I hung around with him, and I just gently, like, I got him by the tail, and I started stroking him and calmed him down. And it was just such like a an amazing moment where this creature that had always just been a dangerous animal to me became,
mm,
there was an interaction there, and that was
mm,
the end for me. I decided, "No, I've got to make this something I do properly." So, from there, looked into getting, how can I get my license? Getting your license in Queensland is not easy, as you well know, and that just started the ball rolling.
mm.
So to answer your question, yeah, it was pretty much my new land of discovery. Australia was where
Yeah.
my passion for snakes really ignited.
Yeah. Yeah, back from so not much in South Africa, but yeah, in Australia, that's where it kind of really changed for
No,
you. Um, what
yeah,
that was your first experience with the carpet python. How was the 'cause I do want to get into the story into uh your family and how your kids have grown up with you as their dad and the impact that you believe you've had on them as in a
yeah,
positive way. But just with this starting off process of snakes for you, um, what were some of the um, initial interactions that you had past this carpet python once you got your license and you started creating somewhat of a name for yourself because
yeah,
because when we used to go to church together, you were the
yeah,
guy that people knew that caught snakes, and I was like I
yeah,
was young and awkward, and I was like, he's the guy that catches snakes. I'll probably talk to him talk to him eventually. And
yeah,
now I'm the guy at church that catches snakes, and everyone calls me, which
yeah,
is
yeah, for
funny how
sure.
life changes. But what are some of the initial experiences past that cup of python where you learnt things? Because I know for myself, uh, those initial interactions, it was very jittery. It wasn't very smooth,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
much flow to it.
yeah,
But then as I've learnt, as with all the catches, you learn where snakes like to be supported, how they'll react
yeah.
in certain situations. But for yourself, what was one or two interactions that kind of um, were maybe a learning point for you in your initial snake
Oh, yeah,
journey?
yeah. Good. You're so right. Yeah, the first, I had to really, like, calm down my human instinct for a long time. My
Mm.
first interactions with many different species was super jittery, just like you say. Um, there, as you ask that question, three, probably three come straight to mind. The first was a python, actually. He was lying in a gutter in Barrelin Point in Ipswich. He was
Ah,
lying in a
yes.
gutter, and the morning sun was coming up. Wow! And the morning sun, it was summer, and the sun was super hot, and this poor snake was getting quite warm in the gutter. He'd been lying in a bit of water, so he was cool.
Mm.
But then here I am, this guy standing over the gutter, coming to bother him, and his eyes were in the sun. He was hot, and he was getting poked by the metal of the gutter, and he was super angry and very nearly bit me pretty badly. Fortunately, I managed to like just dodge him in time, but I learnt
Mm.
quickly that how just by adapting the way that you come at them or the way that you uh, approach them, giving them a bit of shade,
Mm.
the way that you pull them. No, I'm not going to pull the snake backwards out of a gutter by his tail. That's not going to
Mm.
happen.
Mm. Mm.
That was a big one for me. I learned from that. Then second one was a beautiful yellow-faced whiptail, which had been yeah, he was slithering through some sort of bush that was quite thorny. Got him
Oh
by
yeah,
his
hate
tail,
them.
but there was no way I could get him off yeah. I couldn't get him out of the so I managed to finally get him forward out of the bush and stuff, but I didn't give him the respect he deserved, and I was kinda handling him too close to his head,
Mm.
and he turned around and gave me a bite on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
thumb. Um, and that was another one for me. Like, right, you know what? You're getting too macho here. You think that you and snakes have got this thing going on, but at the end of the day, he's a creature who's going to tell you, "Leave
Yes.
me alone if
Yes.
you're
Yep.
getting too close."
Yep.
Fortunately, it was just a dry bite, and there was only a whip snake. So,
Mm.
but I was still very early in my time, so I thought, "Oh gosh, I know he's in a
Yeah.
leopard. Yeah, maybe I need to go to the hospital." But my pride got in the
Yep.
way. I didn't tell anyone. Yeah, I didn't tell anyone. I just kinda cruised around thinking, "Am I gonna die soon?" Um, but it was another
Uh,
God wink moment for me
mm.
because I realized, yeah, you know what? I still need to respect them no matter what species they are. And that sort of flowed into, I think, better relationships with me in the catching phase. Another one was a brown. This was my first Eastern brown
Mhm. Mhm.
in Mount Crosby. A lady called me up, and I got up there, and of course, it was near a rock retaining wall.
I
Um,
do not like retaining walls, man. I feel you.
yeah, so could see it. It's probably living in the retaining wall. It was out on the dust driveway.
Mm.
I knew I had to get to him pretty fast because he was going to bolt back there. Anyway, I managed to get him just as he was going in, just probably too far at the back of his tail, but I wasn't gonna let go because otherwise I was never gonna get him
Mm.
again. Anyway, eventually, after a long time of him, like, contracting and letting go and contracting and letting go, I managed to get him out a
Yep.
bit. But he had actually and I got him put him away, but it was quite distressing for him and for me.
Mm.
And, um, I saw, uh as I managed to catch him and bag him, that somebody in the past had actually obviously tried to chop him with a shovel,
Yeah, right. Yep.
because he had this massive gash down his. He's practically almost cut in half. This poor snake, and that tugging and stuff in the rocks
Mm.
had aggravated that wound,
Right.
which I felt really bad about. So that was a learning curve for me as well. And after that, I putting all like there's lots more after that. Each time you catch, you learn something new. But
This is
those
true.
first few encounters definitely kind of set the scene for how I should treat them.
Mm.
Yeah. So those were some memorable ones.
Yeah, yeah, and those first few experiences of, interacting with snakes, were quite, are definitely quite memorable because that's, like, where you're learning and there's, like, a whole bunch of
Yeah.
information just perforating your brain
Yeah.
cells.
And your adrenaline's going as much as you don't want it to go, your adrenaline's there, and for
Yeah.
me, I was petrified that I was gonna lose the snake. I so badly wanted
Y
to see it, I wanted to
Yeah.
to just cherish this creature and look at it. And I'm like, I'm more concerned about losing you than getting bitten by you. But, there was this adrenaline, and so,
Mm.
yeah.
Now,
Good
Chris,
memories.
with your learning process with snakes, was there anyone that you learnt from directly, or was it all indirectly through self research that you garnered your information from and experience?
Good question, Jay. And for me, as much as I'd love someone to have taught me, there was no one. Like,
Mm.
because the majority of people, they, when they would talk about snakes, they were just evil. They, good snake is a dead snake. No one wanted to know about them. And when they did talk about them, it was normally like some blown up story that you couldn't trust anyway.
It
So
was
I had
not.
to teach myself. Yeah, it's still, but definitely, it was a brown snake and it was 3 meters long.
Yeah, it's the
That's the
thickness
normal
as thick as
statistics.
as thick as my wrist or my forearm or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of I realized, yeah, and I'm quite a shy guy myself anyway. So I think that's kind of why I like snakes, to be honest. I really relate to them. So I decided, no, I'm going to do this myself. So working landscaping on my own, I would see them, then I'd go home and read about them. Yeah, that was about the time that iPhone was still quite new. So I got this app, Snakes of Australia, and I'd make sure
Yeah,
that I was reading the app every day.
yeah,
I went to the library. I got all the books I could out at the library. I'd read them. Uh,
awesome.
I watched a few videos on YouTube, but sometimes I found myself getting a bit annoyed because a lot of the shows were um, were very like sensationalized, and
Yes.
my
Yeah.
experience with snakes was very different. So I kind of put those aside. So to answer
Yeah.
your question, I did it pretty much on my own.
Mm.
Um, and as cool as that was, it was a bit tricky. So which I'll talk about later. I'm showing my own kids as much as I can,
Mm.
myself, because I want them to have that upper hand. And it
Yes.
was pretty much the same with you, wasn't it? You learnt yourself from a young age. You just got it stuck in there, and
Yeah, I just kinda got right into it as, at 6 when I caught my first snake with my Orpa.
yeah.
I was peeing on a tree, with my brother,
Oh wow.
in a park, and then I was like, "Hey, there's a snake," and so, finished up with my own and then, went and caught the other one, and, yeah, that was my first experience as a six-year-old, and, yeah, reading and
Can you
yeah,
remember what it was?
yeah, it was a tree snake, so a
Oh, nice.
non-venomous,
Yeah.
good
Good
start
good
off
one
snake.
to start with. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
problem to get bitten.
That's another thing about teaching myself is that I had to realize, firstly, I'm not Australian, so I haven't grown up here. I need to learn about these snakes myself first. I
Mm,
can't be gung ho and just go get in there. I respected the fact that, okay, this is a learning process. You can't
mm,
just go and grab a brown snake or a red belly or a tiger or whatever just because you want to be a hero. And I took that very seriously.
that's good.
So when I did achieve that goal of actually doing the course and learning how to do it properly for them, for the snake's well-being, like that was a good feeling and a good sense of confidence.
Yes, yes. Um, now with this confidence that you've built up, this, fascination that you've grown with snakes, now you've written a book, which is crazy. It's so cool. Um, with, your kids and how you are, uh encouraging them with knowledge and experiences. Do you go out specifically looking for wildlife and then being like, when you find it, this is what it is? And or is it more so just on this massive camp that you did, just meandering through life along the way, you kind of um, uh, fill them in with what's happening around them?
It's a bit of both. So coming back to that, to the this idea of God winks, I firmly believe that uh, God's glory and his um, design for us to enjoy his design can be
Mm.
seen in all of the amazing animals that we come across. You know, so whether it's snakes or like a little bug that you find on a leaf
Yeah.
with my kids, every single experience is uh, a Godwink moment where I can teach them something about that creature that's amazing,
Mm.
which they uh, which they then take in, but then they can see God's design in that as well, which adds joy and adds life and adds experience to them. You know, just like you said in your introductory video that you do for this podcast, those little small moments that all piece together.
Mm.
So no matter where we go, and I love doing this with Kerry, my wife, too, because she was a real girly girl, which she admits. She back at school, she did the agricultural program, and they would have to go and clean the poo off the cow's feet at Westmac, and she hated it. She hated anything to do with it. She hated the beach, and since we've gotten married, she will actually go, and if I can't get a python, if I'm busy, she'll go and grab the python, even though
Right
she's
on.
not really allowed to. Yeah, normally at her parents' house, because they have heaps of pythons who come through there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's embraced this amazing um, sort of God-wink design aspect of nature. So
Mm.
to come back to your earlier question, within my immediate family, every time we go out, we're on the lookout for something intentional that's going to show us uh, about what an animal's place, what it looks like, its design features. And with regards to snakes themselves, because that is like my passion,
Mm.
I do try and take my kids to specific places where we'll go and look for snakes. I seem to have the worst luck when it looking for like actually going out and finding them. It's
Mm.
like they know I'm coming and they disappear.
Oh.
So it's a bit of a joke in the family, which is super annoying for me. We will come across them randomly, which is great. But whenever we go looking, I normally find something else, but that's okay. So yeah, kind of just a
Oh, well.
combination of these everyday moments, and if we're going out, like yeah, we're taking the jig, and we're taking the bag in case we find something. We're gonna have a good talk about it, and then release it. So yeah, and that's been a really uh, children are born with this amazing love for nature, and then as they get a bit older, I don't know whether it's social programming or just their natural um, sort of safety programming from
Mm.
God. They start to not want. They're like, oh no, I don't want to touch it. I'm scared of that thing.
Mm.
So we kind of go through this journey of as they're little, wow, there's a snake. Can I touch it? Like, no, no. You've got to approach it. Just look at it. Daddy's got to hold it here.
Yeah.
Then now we're going through. No, this is an incredible creature. Come, I want to show you. Um, and then so they've also walking a journey of confidence building and how do I interact with animals? How should I interact with animals? What's the right way to do it? What can I learn from them? Um, and then my hope is that at some stage, and in fact, this is starting to happen already, is they're going out and finding stuff themselves, and they're coming
Yeah.
back and saying, "Hey, Dad, I found this creature,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
did you know about this one?" And they're actually teaching me stuff, which is so
It's great.
awesome.
Yeah.
We've down here in the northern rivers, Jay, you'd love it, mate. It's super wet. It's lots of rain, so there's quite a few new species of bugs in particular.
Mm.
Um, I haven't come across many snakes yet, but they're slightly different compared to
Mm.
Ipswich. Um, and yeah, so they'd say, "Hey, Dad, check this thing we've just found." So, yeah, it's been some great opportunities there for me to teach them, and then for them to teach me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what would with building memories, and with your kids, and searching, and them learning, um, have what ways have you seen your influence on them with how they've grown up, outside of them looking for nature and wildlife, and then telling you about it. How
Yeah.
has your passion and your influence as a dad, how has that worked its way out outside of the nature realm, in some way
Yeah.
or another? Do you
100%,
think?
mate.
How would you say? What would you
100%.
say would be something like that?
Yeah, 100%. Well, straight off the bat, I can tell you something that, as a teacher, something that has always distressed me is seeing how children react to spiders and
Mm,
reptiles in the schoolyard or around school, or even if show them a picture or whatever on the screen. A lot of them have been taught or to like be repulsed by
mm,
these creatures. And I've seen my own kids come into that space with this real compassion and a real uh, courage uh, to not only stand up for that particular creature that's about to get squashed by the kids in the playground,
yeah.
but like a nurturing spirit and
Mm,
like a confidence. It's been really good for the. It's been challenging because a lot of times kids will say, "Oh, no, man, you got to kill that thing."
mm,
But then
yes.
after a couple of times, say, "No, no, this is a very special creature. We need to take care of it. We can't just go around killing everything." And it's built in them confidence in themselves, and it's given them a sense of almost identity within their groups. So
Mm,
Malachi, my son, he's known at school as the nature warrior. He protects anything in the and even though he was teased about it at first, he's got super respect now.
mm,
I was really impressed the other day. I teach my own daughter in year six, and this I think it was a wolf spider, or he was it's probably a wolf spider, or maybe a big huntsman or something. Anyway, he came into the class
mm,
and a lot of the kids were screaming and freaking out. And Michaela, just out of the blue, she came and she let him climb onto her hand and took him out
mm,
of the class. I'm like, wow, this is my 12-year-old girl. I didn't ask her to do it. And in that space, I saw, wow, there's been a softening of her heart
mm.
because she used to be a princess who would quite happily stand on a spider.
Right,
But there's
right.
been something in her that's she's recognized life. She's recognized the gift of life, and she's been able to stand up for that. And that sort of overflows into other things as well. The way that she treats people, um, and the way that she watches things on TV. She's able to analyze things um, through a proper framework of understanding nature. So
Mm,
it's a good question you asked. So that's just a bit of a snippet because there's so much to it that
mm.
I see in my kids on a daily basis. And I've got nothing to do with it other than just showing them and giving them a love for nature. This is all starting to flow through them themselves, which is such a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool that you're able to see that and also then extract that information and observation as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I like to see how others see their impact. Um, and I think if we can realize the impact that we are able to have, we are more particular about how we act and how we speak as well.
Mm,
And so it's that's good.
so
That's great
true.
to hear.
So
It's
true.
great to hear. Now with
Yeah.
your schooling and your experience, you're a teacher. How long have you been a teacher for again?
10 years.
10 years.
So
Okay.
I started teaching at the age of 30. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So at the age of 30, 30, you said.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
you've been snake catching and pretty much being a teacher at with the same amount of time, really, then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, actually, I've
Yeah.
been catching snakes for probably about 13 years now, and
Okay.
although I've been a classroom teacher for 10 years, I've been in schools for 13. I don't know if you remember, I used to be a chappie at
Mm.
Pullenvale State School, and that was
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
like where it all started to happen because Pullenvale was surrounded by nature reserve as well,
Mm.
and yeah, we'd often get snakes in the bathrooms and stuff. So yeah, there was a definite connection there between that moving into a school community, being an educator.
Yep.
Yes, I've been an educator for 13 years. Yeah.
Okay. 13 years, right? Now, with this educating journey and snake catching journey, what are some, not necessarily some, but a, a moment or two that looking back you can see has had a not necessarily a profound impact on who you are today, but an impact on who you are today. Like for example, like I was talking to you just before, when I before we started, when I first met you, didn't really you like snakes. I was just a young kid. Before I was 18, super awkward, wanting to learn more, wanting to know more, but not knowing how. And then uh, getting a job at Pet Barn, and then getting a job as a reptile demonstrator. COVID comes. I'm like, hey, I want to do something with snakes. And then I'm like, hey, Chris
Mm,
knows snakes because for the damage mitigation permit, as you know, you need to have references to say that you're able to capture and handle snakes safely and correctly. And um, from meeting you at a church when I'm how old was I? 13,
I
14, I
think you were
think.
14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
14. And then now I'm then 20, about so. And the guy I met then who knows snakes backs me up for snakes now. I start my own snake catching company, or I try to, and then end up working as a professional snake catcher in another prestigious company. And it's crazy how it's not crazy, but it's cool to be able to see those moments. However little in time, but how profound an impact over time. So, would you? Does any situations as such come to mind as you are 40 years on this earth that has
Yeah.
led to where you are today?
Well, I think in terms of uh, people uh, who were definitely like at a like a crossroads for me. Um,
Mm,
there weren't too many people. In fact, there were quite a few people who almost made it difficult for me. But
mm,
there were a couple of people who really, like, were just a breath of fresh air and, you know, sticking with the analogy of air, they were like wind for me, pushing me forward, was these two guys who did my first course.
mm.
Um, Shucks, I can't even remember their names. I think Paul and, Sue, I think their names were. Anyway, I had to fly down to, uh, Canberra, of all places, to do my first venomous snake
Yeah,
handling course.
right. Okay.
And these guys, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I wanted to get my permit in Queensland, but I couldn't do it in Queensland. Anyway, I went to flew down to Canberra, and these guys, they accepted that I was this guy who really wanted to learn about them, and they just supported me, and they were really helpful and kind. And whenever I hit a roadblock, whether it was red tape from the government or um, you know equipment that I needed, because I didn't have any
Mm,
of that stuff,
yeah.
they just saw in me this uh, passion to just know these creatures better, and they were there and they helped me with that. So um, they really stand out for me as particular people who just through their attitude really helped me.
Mm,
In terms, yeah, I'm not sure. I can't really think of any other people in particular that helped me
Mm.
other than,
And if not people, like just a
I
decision
suppose,
that you've had to make, it for
yeah,
yourself. If not people, then yeah.
in many ways. Have you heard of a guy named Ben Crop by any
I
chance?
think so. I think so.
So Ben Crop, old school, old school. I mean, it sounds funny because he's like 86 years old now, maybe even older. But anyway, he was actually a shark hunter
Mm,
back in the 50s, I think, 50s or 60s. And when I arrived in Australia and started getting into nature, um, he I started watching his DVDs and reading his books, and uh, his character and the way that as he was a shark hunter, and the way that he changed to he become a shark conservationist. Something about him and that character in him really struck
mm,
me. And I think his desire and the way that he went about doing it, because he was so humble. He was just an average Aussie bloke who just loved animals and loved sharks in particular, and went about doing that. That was probably a really good uh, point of my life. I spent probably a good 6 months just learning everything about Ben Crop, what he
right.
did. I actually even went to go and visit his home in Port Douglas,
Yeah,
which is just
right.
south of Cairns, or just north of Cairns. Went and visited there.
Yeah.
So um, those those two attitudes and those two characters from those folks who influenced me were probably very pivotal to me in
Mm.
how I chose to be over those 10, 13 years. Um, I'm trying to think of events. Yeah, no, nothing comes to mind, but
Yeah,
that's
that's alright.
just
Yeah.
those two stick out.
Yeah, those 2 people. Yeah, that's still, um, still important. Now this Ben Crop guy, did you end up getting
Yeah.
to speak to him?
No, no. So he had moved away, and I don't even know where he lives now. But
Mm,
he's yeah, just quite a fascinating dude. His documentaries are probably from the 70s or the 80s, maybe a couple in the 90s. You can get them. It's probably on YouTube. But he just totally passionate about Australian animals. And I think for me, to just jump from snakes into sharks a little bit there,
yeah, no, that's cool.
because
It's an animal.
sharks are like my passion in the water.
Okay, okay,
Living at the coast in Africa, that I spent a lot of my time obsessed with sharks in Africa.
okay.
And then Australia was snakes.
Snakes, yeah.
Um, he so my favorite shark is the grey nurse, which
Mhm,
in Australia is sorry in South Africa is called the ragged tooth, but in Australia it's called the grey nurse. And one of the things that was like I just loved about Ben is, so he used to be a shark hunter, and of course the grey nurse was almost extinct. And if you know the grey nurse shark, it's really placid. It's a beautiful shark.
mm,
They big. You know, they're scavengers essentially. Um,
okay,
but he he really wanted to see them come back to proper numbers, which hasn't actually happened.
okay,
But
due to
yeah,
hunting still?
that was his thing. Oh, Jay, yes, so pretty annoying. So in the 50s and 60s, they were hunted to almost extinction because of their looks. You know, the sharks were man killers. Yeah, and they were hunted to almost extinction just because of the way they look. Um, and then they became protected in the early 90s, but because they only breed when they're very mature, and they only give birth to like one or two pups,
Mm,
quite seldom, they're still really struggling. Um,
mm,
so yeah, that's been quite a big thing for me in also in understanding nature better.
mm,
You know, that's kind of been a little bit of a driving force for me, and that's where Ben Crop came in as well. So my understanding of how the grey nurse shark had the way that it is now really shouldn't be, because there's been a misunderstanding.
Mm.
of this type of creature, which then translates into, of course, our snakes and lizards and octopus and everything. There's
Yep.
so many
Everything
things
else. Yes.
because of just a pure lack of understanding. So
Yes.
yeah, that's kind of where Ben Crop came in for me.
Okay.
But he's
Now,
got some nice books and DVDs.
yeah, I'll have to look him up after our conversation,
Yeah,
because I have heard. I'm sure I've heard of him. I'm sure I've heard of him.
it's
Now
pretty old
with
school.
before my time, uh, before with so we've got from snakes. We'll stick on the sharks, because look,
Mm.
for myself, now I haven't spent a lot of time around the water, and I do understand that we fear what we do not understand, and I don't understand sharks, and so um, I am not confident in the water. My toes, I don't know what it is about it, but they just feel exposed when I'm swimming, and I just got to protect my toes. Sharks probably going to eat my leg instead of my toes, so I don't really know what the problem is. Um, uh, but what is something that, um, helped you better understand sharks? Was it going out and experiencing the shark, or was it knowledge that you, from reading that had a bigger impact on you? So, yeah, was it reading of knowledge or experience that impacted you most with your
Yes, such a
love of
good
sharks?
question. And that was probably so my first experience with the shark was probably I would say, the spark that started lighting that initial fire. I was probably about
Mm,
17, and a friend of mine. So I lived on the coast in South Africa, very close to Jeffreys Bay, actually. Um, a lot of
Jeffreys
guys
Bay?
who watch your podcast, yeah, they might remember Mick Fanning had an interaction with a shark while he was surfing the Billabong Pro in Jeffreys Bay. Um, it's quite interesting to watch if they get a chance. Anyway, so about an hour and 45 minutes north of Jeffreys Bay is where I grew up.
Okay.
Pretty cold water, but anyway, a friend of mine had caught a massive grey nurse shark, and he had, because it's on a river mouth, had brought it in over like 2 hours. And here she was, this beautiful ragged tooth grey nurse lying on the beach. I quickly paddled across the river on my surfboard to go and have a look at it. I was just fascinated by this creature. She was so tired, eh?
Mm,
And he got the hook out and he put it in the rip next to the seawall. And I decided I've got to stick with this animal. So
mm,
I hopped on my board and I just paddled out over the top of it
mm.
as it swam back out to the ocean. And it
Right.
was like life changing, life changing for me in terms of how I interact with sharks in particular. It just I became quite obsessed with them. Um, and Yes, I went out with her. The water was really clear that day, so I was able to just watch how gracefully she moved and then headed off back out into the ocean. A few days later, my friend and I were surfing in really dirty water, actually, and
Mhm.
just the two of us, and between us, this fin came up, and we didn't really know exactly what that was. And we did know that there was a great white breeding area nearby, a place called
Oh, yeah.
Fountain Rocks, where they would just sort of float around in the current. So they're really well fed.
Casual.
A
Yeah.
boat had flipped it. Yeah, but a boat had flipped in the mouth earlier that day, and there was a lot of fish blood and stuff. Anyway, we didn't know that at the time, but out came this fin. The two of us bolted out of the water. But it was another experience with the shark that was a bit different to what I had always imagined
Mm,
would happen. If there was a shark around, you're gone skis. You're going to die. You're going to get eaten. End of the story. So it started to alter my thinking and my brain processing.
mm.
So and then I went and did a dive. I did an underwater dive with them. That was here in Australia, actually. I dove with a bull shark and a
Oh,
couple of
cool.
grey nurse. Once again, here with these beautiful creatures coming past me, done in a very particular way, keeping your extremities to yourself, like your toes, make sure I got to keep yourself in a particular way. You got to
Mhm.
behave around animals the way they interpret behavior. And
Yes.
once again, it was an awesome experience. Um, so that that has sort of grown in me. But I got to tell you, now that I live in Ballina, Ballina has a bit of a reputation for great whites,
Mm.
and
Mm.
there've actually been a few fatal attacks here. And I've started asking myself, are you being stupid? Are you being a bit, you know,
Irrational,
what's the word? Ignorant.
ignorant. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
irrational by just paddling out on your own where you know there are great whites,
Mm.
especially because this is where we have heaps of humpback whales coming
Mm.
up and down with their calves. In fact, we've got stacks of mummy whales coming down with their calves at the moment. So
Right
I
on.
think it would be a bit silly. So I don't actually surf on my own anymore, and I am a bit scared.
Mm.
So yeah, it's an interesting journey we go through with dangerous animals. You know, there's and I think it's probably healthy as well. It's healthy to not think you're a hero,
Mm.
um, and then
Yeah, it keeps you
the next thing
alive.
you know, you've yeah. So I
Right.
hope that
Yeah.
answers your question. Sorry if I waffled a bit there.
Yeah, no, it's cool, it's cool. I mean, I don't know how I'd respond if I had a fin go up near me. I know that I can't run in water, and I can't control the environment. On land, I can
Yeah.
control it a little bit more. I mean, yesterday I had a eastern brown snake. I was just messing
Yeah.
around a little bit, and he was coming at me because I was being a bit annoying to him, and I was like, "Frick, man,
Yeah. Yeah.
you confident sucker." And I'm glad I had my
Yeah.
bag there because I was able to um, block him with the bag. But I can do that on land.
Yeah.
I can't do that
Yeah.
in the water. Um, but yeah, so you would say experience has had a high
Yes.
impact on you more
Yes.
so than literature.
Yeah.
Would you say? Okay, cool.
I was going to just say that as an added element to that, I did go and do a lot of research on sharks just because I loved them,
Mm,
and that was totally
yep.
valuable as well.
Yep.
But it was, it
So it's
started
like
with that
it was the
experience.
experience that kind of
Yeah,
energized you to research further, you would say?
yeah,
Yep, right on.
yeah.
Well, I wanna do the overrated, underrated segment with you. And then, I got 1 or 2 more questions, just before we land the plane. Good?
No worries, Jay. Thanks, mate.
Now overrated, underrated, rules are respond with overrated or underrated. So, overrated, underrated, family camping trips.
Overrated.
They're overrated.
With four young kids, yes, I'll add that information.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
my
okay.
experience.
Okay, right on. Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. Lots of kids. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
overrated, underrated, eating bugs as a kid.
Oh, damn, definitely overrated, mate.
Overrated.
I have no positive memories. No positive memories. Definitely,
I
yeah,
have positive
not good
memories.
flavors.
I've got one that comes to mind. I used to eat moths.
Uh-huh. Oh gosh,
Me and
dusty.
my yeah, well, they almost became extinct like that shark did, because me and my brother, at least around
Yeah.
the house, because we would circle the house looking for moths and trying to eat them, and we tricked our sister into
Serious.
eating
Was
one
that
one
Laurie?
time. Yeah, yeah, with me and Lawrence used to eat
Oh,
moths.
wow.
Uh, overrated, underrated, shark nets.
Oh, definitely overrated.
Okay.
There's actually a good shark system down here because of all the sharks I was telling you about.
Mm,
Um, look, there's a lot of opinion about it, but essentially what I'm seeing is healthier shark numbers. They have a drumline system here where shark gets caught on a drum line, boat goes out, tags it, and they release the shark.
Mm,
And then they have a radio transmitter like every few kilometers. And when a shark is in 500 meters, it sends a ping to the New South Wales Fisheries Department or whatever, and they're able to respond.
mm.
So, of course, better shark survival rate, less crap in the ocean, and
Yep,
less killing all the other creatures.
yep.
So,
Awes
definitely overrated.
definitely overrated. Okay, overrated, underrated, final one, a hook versus jigger for snakes.
Oh, mate,
That's not even a I can't even that's not even how you
I would
answer.
probably
I'll
go
say
with
jig
Jigger.
yeah, that's kinda like that's overrated, underrated. Here you have 2 options. But
Yeah,
you'd go with you'd go with jigger. Okay, okay, so the hooks
yeah,
yeah, okay, but jigger is better. That's the grabber, just confirming we're on the same page. That's the where you
yeah.
grab the snake. Yep, right on. You're right on. Have you always stuck with the jigger? Have you used hook or, much at all, or has it just been
So
mainly the jigger?
so when you say Jigger, you mean like the clampy thing?
Yes.
Oh, no, I actually don't use that very often. When I my
Okay.
Jigger is when they might have taught me the wrong word, but my Jigger is like the, uh, like a hook with like a
And then you press
triangular thing.
yeah, and you press on the snake?
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
probably the right word. I use it for both.
yeah. I think I've only ever used my hook sorry, my jigger, my
Grabs.
clampy thing,
Yep.
uh, maybe once or twice,
Mm.
because, when I do, that's normally with Eastern Browns, but
Yep.
they go crazy.
They do. They
They,
do.
like, flap around, and I get that gets me a bit edgy, actually, and I find, yeah, if I can get him on the hook, it's normally a smoother transition,
Yep.
but it's nice to have with me anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it's a nice addition. Okay, well, that was the segment. Uh, good to know your thoughts. Uh, moving, as we, close up, well, as we finish the conversation, I would like to, hear a bit on what you have planned for your future, what you plan on doing next. Now you're going to be an author. It's pretty cool. What do you have any other steps past authorism and stardom in the future?
Oh, Jay, I'm in a bit of a transition stage. So, of course, I'm a school teacher,
Mm,
and I do feel a calling to that. I do feel God's called me to that, which is awesome. But it's teaching is a big job in terms of time and energy, and sometimes it does take away a lot of my time to be in nature, which is a real tension for me. Like
yeah.
I want to be in nature more. Um, so if I was gonna put in a couple of sentences, what I pray will be the case is in about a
Mm,
decade, I want to be a full time author, writing my series about snakes traveling Australia,
mm,
and offering my snake and reptile catching services as much as I can because I really miss it. At the
mm,
moment, I can only offer it on school holidays.
yeah.
So often people will call up, "Oh, I've got a snake," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I'm teaching. I
Yeah.
can't come." And that's
Yeah.
that's like torture. That's absolute
Yeah.
torture when there's a big brown or a big red belly sitting there waiting for you, and you can't go and get him. That's absolute torture. So I'd love to be doing that. Yeah, just speaking into the lives of people across the world, hopefully through my books. Um, and doing what I love here with my kids.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's my hopes and dreams.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. And uh, what would be some or a tip or skill style uh, of teaching, of building up and encouraging that someone, either a parent or a friend that can see something or a direction that someone's taking, um, how would you suggest encouraging that direction? What would you suggest?
Okay. Well, in terms of getting into the snake and reptile industry, is that kind of the niche you're talking about?
Yeah, wildlife in general, like, uh, I
Okay,
guess
wildlife
how
in
with
general?
yourself, how you, when we used to go to church together, and when we did speak, you would talk to
Yeah,
wildlife, and you'd encourage me in my direction, that sort of thing.
yeah. I think so there's two things I would probably say you need to embrace. One of them is finding a go-to person or a couple of people uh who you can connect with, who you know have walked a little bit of that walk and can give you some advice, that you can connect. Yeah, there's a lot that you can read about and stuff, but having a relationship with someone who can nurture you through that initial phase is
Mm,
really good. So whether it's reaching out to someone who maybe you've seen online, like you, for instance, I'm so impressed with what you do, Jay. What I've seen what you do through
thank you.
this blog, through your other YouTube stuff. Um, I've seen, you've even been in the flippin' newspaper.
Yeah,
If you do
yeah.
a Google search on you, not to mention you have a passion for youth. People like you reaching out to someone like you who is a humble person but who loves nature is very important. You'd need to have that relationship.
Mm,
And with that in mind,
mm,
there are people out there who will try and stamp on your enthusiasm if they know a lot about nature. Some people, it seems to me like they have this, like, almost,
a
what's the
knowledge
word?
ego boost,
Uh,
sort of.
Knowledge ego, absolutely. And they can almost push you down. I had a couple of guys who told me basically I shouldn't bother going for my reptile license. And that really annoyed me.
Mm,
And fortunately, I pushed through, and because I loved it, I had to do it. I did it anyway. But if I had
yeah,
someone like you who was like, "No, mate, let's do this together. Let's do it properly, top class." So that's a first port of call. And
okay.
the second thing is, uh, you're probably going to have humble beginnings, and you should have humble beginnings in the sense that
Yep.
you can't just jump in and know everything and have the skills, have the knowledge. It takes time, and you sometimes have to sacrifice a bit. One of the things I did, which was very valuable to me, was I volunteered at Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary
Yep.
because, um, as you probably know, they have an amazing reptile house there.
Mm,
So I thought, hey, I can volunteer at this place for 5 days. I'm going to get in there and learn about. And I had to pick up dingo poo, and I had to feed the flying foxes, and I had to pick up the wombat poo and stuff, which was epic. But it wasn't the snakes.
no, yeah, yeah.
But I wasn't getting paid. In fact, I had to pay to do it.
Mm,
But I got in there, and I managed to connect with the snake handlers, and I managed to look at them every day. I'd go in and look at them and learn about them and figure out what they eat, how they behave. But I had a few family members tell me I shouldn't be wasting my time. I should be earning money for my family.
mm,
I shouldn't be volunteering. So I had to kind of put that behind me a little bit. I had to be a bit humble. Um, so yeah, try and connect with somebody so that you have a relationship, even if it's an online relationship, and
mm,
be willing to put in a few hard yards, do a bit of volunteering work, get out there, um, and take time to learn more.
mm.
So I think that would be my two nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, right on. Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for that. That's it's being really cool catching up again and hearing about your book and how that's going, and kind of a bit more of your story now that I'm older and I can remember conversations that I have with people a lot easier than I was 14 and
Thanks, Jay.
prepubescent. With your book, when it does come out, if you want to give me a link or something of the kind to the book, and then I can put it underneath in the show notes when we get to it. Then if people would like to follow that story and get that book, then they have a way to do that. Is that cool with you?
Mate, 100%. That sounds awesome. I'm
Awesome.
very pleased. I'm very chuffed that you would offer to do that. Thank you.
100%, 100%. And look, with all the best with your snake catching and your this next stage in your life. And I look forward to getting to see you in person and maybe catching a couple snakes or seeing a bird or two. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider leaving a like, a review, a rating on whatever platform you have listened on. Or if you have any suggestions on guests or topics, reach out to me on my socials. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode.